this video, we're going to learn how to bootstrap or initialize a Hibernate application. So I have an existing project here, but I'm actually going to start from scratch. So in IntelliJ, what we can do to start a new Java Hibernate application is click on File, and then click New, and then we'll click Project. And by default, we have Java selected here, so we're going to leave that as is. But in the right pane here, what we can do is go down to Hibernate, and so I'll just enable Hibernate there. And you'll notice that beneath these selections here are a couple options that we can enable. So what we're particularly concerned of is downloading all of the required dependencies to get our application up and running. So we're going to set the library setting to download, and this is going to fetch all of the required dependencies from a content delivery network, or CDN. So we'll click Next here, and then we'll name our project. So we'll simply say Hibernate application, and we'll simply click Finish here. And so this will download all of the necessary jars from a CDN, as I mentioned previously. So we're going to open this up in the current window. And now if I look at my project structure here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that I have a lib directory. And if I expand the lib directory, you'll notice that I have various jars in here. So of particular interest, of course, are the Hibernate Core, Hibernate JPA jars. And so those will be utilized quite heavily throughout the development of your Java Hibernate application. Now, one more thing that we actually need to do here is, since we're actually connecting to an Oracle 12c database, we need to add another dependency to our project here, which was not downloaded because it's not actually available on that content delivery network, and that is the OJDBC jar. So what we're going to do here is add this jar. So we can do this by going to our project settings. And so actually what we'll do here is, rather than using the shortcut, we'll go to File, we'll go to Project Structure, and then we will click on Global Libraries. So I've actually added this jar already to my IntelliJ Global Libraries. So you can see that I have an OJDBC jar here, and what I'm going to do on that is right-click and click Add to Modules. I'll click OK here, and then I'll apply, and then click OK. And so now if you expand the external libraries, you've got the OJDBC jar ready to go. Now, now we must actually define the Hibernate configuration. So Hibernate expects there to be a hibernate.cfg.xml file in the root of your class path. So what we're going to do is add this file to our source directory here. So we're going to right-click on Source, click New, File. We're going to call this hibernate.cfg.xml. All right. And what I'm going to do now is ultimately paste in some XML here that consists of our Hibernate settings. So you'll see here that the parent tag here is Hibernate configuration, and inside here is a nested session factory tag, and inside the session factory tag we have various properties. So the first property we have here is hibernate.connection.driver, and this is ultimately pointing to the Oracle JDBC driver that we added, or jar that we added previously, the OJDBC 7 jar. And the second property that we have here is hibernate.connection.url, and this is the database connection string to our Oracle backend database. And then another property that I have here is the username. So of course we require username and password to connect to our database. So we've got those two properties here. And then of course we have the hibernate.dialect property, and this is set to the Oracle 12c dialect so that Hibernate knows how to interact with this database. And that's essentially it for the Hibernate configuration. Now what we need to do is basically declare a class which we can ultimately leverage to load the configuration and establish connections to our database. So what I'm going to do is right-click on the source directory. I'm going to say New Package, and I'm going to call this util. So I'm going to place this Hibernate utility class inside this package. So as you can imagine, the class itself will be Hibernate util. So I'm going to right-click on the util package, I'm going to click on New Java class, and I'm going to call this Hibernate util. All right, so we've got that class in place. Now what I'm going to do is ultimately paste in the definition or declaration of this class here. So I'm going to do that right now. So you can see here that we've got public class Hibernate util. The Hibernate util has a private static final instance variable of type session factory, and it basically is initialized by calling build session factory. So the first time that we actually call the getter on our util, this build session factory method will be invoked. And if we look at the build session factory method, what we're doing here is we are ultimately loading the Hibernate configuration. So in our try block here, you can see configuration equals new configuration, and then we call configuration.configure, and this basically loads the hibernate.cfg.xml file that we had in our in the root of the class path. And so now if we create an entry point into this, we can actually run the application and confirm that the configuration was loaded, and we can actually establish a connection. So what I'm going to do now is on the root of the class path, so source new Java class, I'm simply going to call this class main, and I'm going to add a main method to it. So public static void main string args. All right, so we've done that. Now I should just be able to call my Hibernate util class. So Hibernate util dot get session factory, and by doing that, we will actually load the Hibernate configuration, and your application will be initialized. And then from then on, you can actually call open session to actually interact with the database. So let's actually run this application and see what happens in our console here. All right, so I right-clicked on the main class, and I clicked on debug, and so you can see here that we have a message in the console saying Hibernate successfully configured, and that is how you bootstrap or initialize your Hibernate application.